Hello students, today we are going to discuss project management, critical path method and particularly project crashing. So today's session will cover project crashing, how project is crashed to a minimum level, optimum level, what is project crashing all about. But before we start today's session, let us see what we discussed in the previous two classes regarding project management. Project management classes, in the previous two project management classes, we discussed in the first class, the very first class, we discussed what is network analysis, difference between critical path method and program evaluation and review technique, and also we discussed in details the rules of network construction. All these were discussed in the first class, in project management class, and in the second class about project management and network analysis, we discussed what is critical path method of a project network diagram, and how to locate or determine the critical path, how to determine normal project duration of the project. These are the topic of discussion in the second class. So in the previous two classes, first of all we understood the rules of network construction in the very first class, and in the second class we understood how to determine the network, in the network diagram, how to determine a critical path and how to determine the normal project duration of the project. So that were discussed in the previous two classes. Now, students, in this class, we will cover a discussion about what is project crashing. Today's discussion will entirely cover the project crashing. And first of all, we will discuss what is project crashing. Secondly, we will discuss in details procedure for project crashing, procedure for crashing a project. And thirdly, after understanding all these things, what is project crashing and the procedure for project crashing, we'll solve one illustration. We'll solve one illustration involving drawing the network diagram, identifying the critical path, determining normal project duration and normal project cost, and also we'll crash the time of activities and the project duration to arrive at the optimum project completion time. After determining the critical path, after determining normal project duration and normal project cost, we will crash the time of activities and the project duration to arrive at the optimum project completion time, and we will determine the optimum project cost. We will determine the optimum project cost. That is the requirement of the illustration we are going to solve in this session after discussing the procedure for crashing a project. So these are the topics to be discussed today. So let us start with the short definition of project crashing. What is project crashing in short? In simple terms, crashing of project means reducing the activity times of the project deliberately by putting in extra effort and cost, and thereby reducing the completion time of the entire project from normal level to an optimum level. Now, what is deliberately? Deliberately here means doing the things intentionally and with a purpose. Here the purpose is to reduce the project duration. That's the purpose, and we'll do that systematically. So deliberately here has a meaning doing the things systematically and with a purpose. That is the meaning of the word deliberately here. So we'll do this thing, reduction in project time, project duration. In fact, to reduce the project duration, we have to reduce the activity duration. We'll do that. We'll see how it is done. But deliberately means doing systematically with a purpose, intentionally, and with the intention of reducing the entire project duration. So this is the definition in simple terms Crashing of project means reducing the activity time of the project deliberately by putting in extra effort. So reducing the activity times. So the objective is actually reducing the activity times of the project deliberately by putting in extra effort. So by putting in extra effort and cost. Obviously, when you want to reduce a project activity, reduce the time of an activity, you have to put extra effort. Like I gave an example of construction of a building or construction of any multi-storied shopping mall or theater or like that. So there one particular activity is laying the foundation. So I gave the example, the laying the foundation normally takes normal time for laying the foundation of a mall, of a shop, or of a residential house, residential complex. Maybe, say for example, laying the foundation takes say 10 days. If you want to reduce this activity time, if you want to reduce this activity time from 10 days to say 8 days or 7 days, obviously you need to have more number of workers or laborers. So that is called putting in extra effort. If you want to reduce that activity time from 10 days to 8 days or 7 days, you'll have to employ more number of laborers or workers, and also by paying them more. So that is called putting in extra effort and cost. So by putting in extra effort and cost, you can reduce the activity times, and thereby you can reduce the completion time, and thereby you can reduce the completion time of the entire project. Completion time of the entire project from normal level to optimum level. Now what is normal level? Normal level is the average time actually takes to complete one activity and average time to complete the entire project. There's a normal level where you don't put extra effort and extra cost. You employ don't incur an extra cost. That is a normal level, average level. And from that average level, from the normal level, if you want to reduce the time further, you have to put extra effort and incur extra cost. I have already given an example, and that level is called optimum level. Again, let us understand what is optimum level. Optimum level of time of an activity, optimum level of time of a project duration is actually the time which cannot be reduced further, even if you employ extra effort, even if you put extra effort, even if you incur extra cost, further cost. You cannot reduce the time of that activity further. You cannot reduce the time of that activity further, even if you put extra effort and incur extra cost. So that level, that duration of that activity is the optimum duration. Optimum duration of the project. Actually, in course of time, we'll see when you arrive at the optimum project duration. I repeat, when you arrive at the optimum duration of the project, you may have one or two activities still may be reduced to a lower level, crash level. I repeat, we'll see in course of solving the problem. After you reach the optimum duration of the project, after you reach that, you may find there are one or two activities in the whole project diagram which can further be reduced to a crash level. But there will be no value addition by reducing that activity to a crash level, incurring extra cost, putting extra effort. Because by incurring extra effort and extra cost, you may reduce that activity time or activity duration, but that will not reduce the whole project duration. The project duration, once it reached the optimum level, I am talking about the project duration, once it reached the optimum level, at that level, if you have one or two activities which are yet to be, which still can be crashed to a lower level, that will not give any value addition by doing that, because you will incur extra cost, you will put extra effort to reduce the activity duration, but that will not reduce the project duration by doing that. So we will not do that, and that will be our optimum project activity times and optimum project duration. So this is the short definition of, simple definition of what is project crashing. Now, here onwards, we'll discuss and understand the things in details. What project crashing we have understood very well, so I'm just reading it out fast. What I have written here. What is project crashing? A significant aspect of critical path method network analysis lies in the capacity to evaluate alternative ways to expedite some, or if possible all. Expedite some, or if possible all. If possible all the activities indicated in the network diagram, and then analyze their cost implication. What does it mean? Critical path method facilitates to evaluate critical path method facilitate or to evaluate alternative ways by utilizing critical path method technique and the network analysis critical path method technique. What you can do, we can evaluate alternative ways to expedite some or all the possible activity, all the activities indicated in the network, and then analyze the cost implication. It means under CPM critical path method technique, the duration of some or all of the activities of the project can be cut down if some additional resources like man, material, machine, equipment are employed from them. So, if some additional resources like man, material, equipment are employed, activities of the project, some or all of the activities of some or all of the activities of the project can be cut down, and leading to the reduction in the entire project duration. So that can be done, that is possible under critical path methods. That's what it is here written. And the whole process is known as project crashing. In general, the more the time by which an activity time is required to be crashed, the greater the amount of resources that will be required to employed on it. So, the more the time by which an activity time is required to be cut or crashed, the greater will be the amount of resources that will be required to be employed on it. It is obvious. The example I was giving right now, activity of laying foundation of a residential complex under construction. There, if it takes normally 10 days to complete the laying foundation activity by employing, say, 20 workers. By employing 20 workers, it takes 10 days normally to complete the activity of laying foundation. Now, if you want to reduce that duration from 10 days to 8 days, you need to employ more employees, maybe 4 more employees. That means to complete the laying foundation activity in 8 days, you need now 24 employees. Now, if you want to reduce that activity by another 2 days, probably you will require 4 more employees or 3 more employees. So that's what it is. The more the time by which an activity time is required to be cut or crashed, the greater the amount of resources that will be required to be employed on it. But remember here at this point that you cannot crash or you cannot reduce the activity time or activity duration as much as you want. No, that is not possible. There is a limit, and that is actually called optimum time, optimum duration for that activity, and of course totaling up all these optimum activity duration, the optimum project duration. What I mean to say, there is a limit by which, up to which you can cross the activity duration. and that is optimum duration. And here again, the optimum duration means the time or duration of that activity below which you cannot reduce the time further. If you find that laying foundation activity cannot be reduced, you can reduce it from 10 days to 8 days, maybe 10 days to 8 days to 7 days. But if you find 7 days, it cannot be reduced below 7 days. The duration, activity duration cannot be reduced below 7 days. Then 7 days become optimum duration for that particular activity. So that is a limit by which up to which. But from normal duration, always from normal duration, you can reduce the activity time to an optimum level, which is the level beyond which or below which you cannot reduce the duration of the activity further. So this is this. But the basic principle here is the more the time by which an activity time is required to be cut or crashed, the greater the amount of resources that will be required to be employed on it, and that up to a level of optimum duration only. After optimum duration is reached, even if we employ more amount of resources, that will not further reduce the time of that activity. That will not be able to reduce the time of the activity, and which is the optimum level. Okay, fine. Now, let us move forward. Thus, higher the amount of direct activity cost. Here, actually, to be very precise, here we are talking about direct activity cost. The higher the direct activity cost, higher amount of direct activity cost. Thus, higher amount of direct activity cost would be associated with smaller activity duration, lead to smaller activity duration. Higher amount of direct activity cost would lead to smaller amount of activity duration times, while longer duration times would involve longer direct activity cost. Lower, I repeat, longer duration times should involve lower direct activity cost. So higher amount of direct activity cost would involve smaller activity duration, would lead to smaller activity duration. Higher amount of direct activity cost would lead to smaller activity duration, whereas longer duration times would involve lower direct activity cost. Now, such deliberate, conscious, and with the plan, deliberate means with the planned action, systematically planned action, deliberate reduction process, deliberate reduction process means systematically designed, planned action, that is called deliberate. Such deliberate reduction of activity times leading to reduction is normal project duration by putting in extra effort and direct activity cost is called crashing the project. What is this? Deliberate reduction of activity times leading to reduction in normal project duration. Reduction in normal project duration by putting in extra effort and direct activity costs is called crashing of project. So is called crashing of project. What we were discussing actually about the higher amounts of direct activity cost leading to smaller activity duration and longer duration times involving lower direct activity cost can be explained again, can be stated again in short. For normal duration, direct activity costs involved will be normal. This is the simply stated principle of all these things about project crashing of activities and crashing a project. For normal duration, direct activity costs involved will be normal, whereas for smaller duration, direct activity costs involved will be higher. direct activity costs. We are talking about direct activity costs. For normal duration, direct activity costs will be normal, whereas smaller duration of activity, smaller duration of project, direct activity costs involved will be higher. That's the basic principle to keep in mind when you go for crashing up activities and crashing up projects. This principle should be kept in mind. Now we go into straight the procedure, project crashing procedure. How a project is crashed systematically. Step 1, computation of cost slope of the activities. Now what is cost slope? Cost slope, there's a formula for that. Cost slope is crash cost minus normal cost divided by normal time minus crash time. So when you go for execution of project, when you try to draw the network diagram with all the information available, you also have the information about crash cost. Crash cost, there is the minimum cost. Crash cost is the maximum, sir. Crash cost is the maximum cost which need to incur or which needs to employ to reduce the time, that's crash time. To reduce the time to a crash level, you have to increase the cost to a crash level. I repeat, to reduce the time to a crash level, to reduce the time of activity to a crash level, you have to increase the cost to a crash level. So cost is increased to a crash level to reduce the time or duration of the activity to a crash level. Earlier it was normal time and normal cost, and you increase the normal cost to a crash cost to reduce normal time to a crash time. Now what is cost slope? Crash cost minus normal cost whole divided by normal time minus crash time. Crash cost minus normal cost whole divided by normal time minus crash time. This is the crash cost slope. So this is the first step. Step 1. In the step 1, you have to calculate cost slope of the activities. Computation of cost slope of the activities, of all the activities. Actually, you have to, at this stage, you have to compute cost slope of, in fact, of all the activities. Of all the activities. At this stage, in fact, you have to compute cost slope of all the activities. This is step 1. Now, step 2, crashing activity. Here you start crashing activity, crashing of activity duration one by one, systematically. So first, crashing in step 2, if there is only one initial critical path. Remember, the first crashing will start if there is only one critical path. If there is only one critical path, maybe at times in the very first drawing, in the very first network diagram, you may have more than one critical path. We'll see what to do there then. If you have, in the very first network diagram, if you have more than one critical path, what to do, we'll see that next. But at this stage, let us understand, if you have only one critical path in the first network diagram, find the critical activity having the lowest cost slope. But if you have only one critical path, find the critical activity having the lowest cost slope. Find the critical activity having the lowest cost slope and crash this activity by 1 day. 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 And after that, draw a new network diagram. Of course, after crashing this activity by 1 day, you have to draw a new network diagram. So, what is this? Find the critical activity. In the very first network diagram, I told you, you have to find out the critical path, and critical path is actually the path which contains all the critical activities. The critical path is the path which contains all the critical activities, and in that critical path of all those critical activities, you have to find out that critical activity which has the lowest cost slope. We have calculated cost slope of all the activities, Now, out of all these activities, where you may have some critical, some non-critical, you have computed cost slope of all the activities. Now, at this step, you have to find out that critical activity which has lowest cost slope and crash this activity by 1 day. And after that, draw a new network diagram. We will see that when you solve the illustration, we will see how all these things are done. Let us just understand the steps at this stage. Step 3. Now, step 3, it is just repeating step 2. Repeat step 2 so long there is only one critical path. So, repeat so long. Repeat step 2 so long there is only one critical path. So long there is only one critical path, you have to repeat step 2. Nothing more than that. So when you draw, after catching 1 day of that critical activity having lowest cost slope, when you draw the new diagram, again you find there is one critical path. And again you follow the step 2, finding out the lowest cost slope activity in that critical path again, and crashing that activity by 1 day. So you have to repeat step 2 in step 3. Now step 4. In step 4, you have to crash again, but here if there is more than one critical path. Now at step 4, after doing all this earlier crashing, if there is more than one critical path, what happens if there is more than one critical path? At this stage, if there is more than one critical path, you have to crash those activities which are common. Crash those activities which are common to all the critical paths. Crash those activities which are common to all the critical paths by as many days as possible. By as many days as possible. So, if you have at this stage more than one critical paths, say you have 2 paths or 3 paths at this stage, critical paths, I am talking about critical paths. If you have more than one critical paths, find out those activities which are common to all these critical paths. If you have 2 critical paths, which are the activities common to both these critical paths? If you have 3 critical paths, find out those activities which are common to all these 3 critical paths. And what you have to do at this stage, crash those activities which are common to all the critical paths, and crash to what level? Crash by as many days as possible. That means at this stage you crash those common activities to a crash level, simply to a crash level maximum, as many days as possible, to a crash level. You crash those activities to a crash level. And after that, draw a new network diagram. Of course, after this stage also, after crashing those common activities by maximum possible days, you have to draw a network diagram again. So this is step 4. Step 5, further crashing of activities which are not common to the critical paths. Now, at this stage, obviously you have more than one critical path, maybe 2 or 3 critical paths, and already you have crashed those common activities to the maximum possible days. By maximum possible days, you have already crashed those common activities. And after crashing all these common activities from all these critical paths, you are left with the activities which are actually not common to the critical paths. It is obvious, after crashing the common activities of all the critical paths to a maximum level, now you are left with the activities, or say critical activities, you are left with critical activities which are not common to the critical paths. So at this stage, what you have to do? At this stage, same number of days you have to crash, but how much, how many days? At this stage, you have to crash by same number of days as maximum as possible. You have to crash same number of days as maximum as possible. Should be crashed simultaneously. Crash simultaneously from each of the critical paths. Now, what does it mean? Simply, if you have 2 critical paths, and from these two critical paths you have already crashed those common activities to a maximum level, and you are left with all those critical activities which are not common to these two critical paths. Now, if you find you can crash critical path 1 by 3 days, maybe one activity by 1 day, another activity by 2 days. You can crash one activity by 1 day and another activity by 2 days of the critical path 1. So totaling, you can crash critical path 1 by 3 days. And if you find similarly critical path 2, second critical path can be crashed by 4 days. One activity may be by 1 day, one activity by 1 day, another activity by 1 and another activity by 2 days. So 1 plus 1 plus 2, so 4 days. 3 activities in the second critical path can be crashed by 4 days. What you have to do? As it is said, same number of days. You have to crash same number of days as maximum as possible. That means you may crash at this stage, you may crash only 3 days. 3 days from critical path 1 and 3 days from critical path 2. That's what it is said in this step. There is the meaning of same number of days as maximum as possible, because critical path 1 can be crashed by 3 days, one activity by 1 day, another activity by 2 days, and critical path 2 can be crashed by 4 days, one activity by 1 day, another activity by 1 day and another activity by 2 days. So total 4 days. But if you crash critical path 2 by 4 days, you cannot crash critical path 1 by 4 days, because there you can crash only by 3 days maximum. So that's what is called maximum possible, as maximum as possible. So at this stage, in this case which I am giving an example of, you can crash maximum 3 days from critical path 1 and critical path 2 simultaneously. The word was actually simultaneously. You have to crash simultaneously 3 days. You have to crash the critical path 1 by 3 days and critical path 2 by 3 days simultaneously from each of the critical paths. And one more important thing you have to remember, you have to keep in mind when you follow this step, when you crash uncommon activities from critical paths by following this rule, you have to keep in mind this very important thing, which is care should be taken to ensure that the lowest cost flow of activities are crashed first and then the next lowest. So here, when you crash same number of days as maximum as possible from each of the critical paths simultaneously, you have to ensure that lowest cost flow of activities are crashed first. As I was telling, see the simple example I was giving, critical path 1 you can crash uncommon activities by 3 days, and obviously critical path 2 also you will crash by 3 days only. And the example was critical path 2. For critical path 2 you could crash one activity by 1 day, one activity by 1 day and another activity by 2 days. So 3 activities, 1 plus 1 plus 2. So you can crash 4 days, but since critical path 1 can be crashed by 3 days only, so you have to crash the second critical path also by 3 days only. Now the point is, the question is, out of 4 days which can be crashed from these 3 activities of critical path 2, I repeat, the question is, how out of 4 days which can be crashed from 3 activities of critical path 2, which 3 days you will crash? I mean, would you crash both the days from third activity, or both the days from third activity and one from the other 2 activities, or you would crash 1 day from third activity and 1 day from each of the other 2 activities? So that depends on lowest cost slope. Which activity of these 3 activities, which one has lowest cost slope? So you find out of these 3 activities of critical path 2, where you have 4 more days possible for crashing, but you are crashing only 3 days, you start with that activity. You start with that activity for crashing which has lowest cost load. That's all you need to keep in mind. That's what you need to keep in mind when you crash uncommon activities from more than one critical path at this step, at this stage. Clear? I hope I have understood. I have made things clear, but I commit, I ensure you will understand this better. If you have some confusion or doubt about this, you will understand this better when you solve the problem illustration after completing these steps. So next step number 6. Step number 6 is simple. It is nothing but repeating step number 5. Step number 5, we undertook step number 5 when we had more than one critical path and all the critical path having uncommon activities, because earlier we have already cached the common activities. And step number 5 is for uncommon activities of critical paths. So long you can crash simultaneously, maximum number of days, same number of days simultaneously as maximum as possible from each of the critical paths. We'll continue step 5. That's what it is said. What is said? Repeat step 5 so long. Repeat step 5 so long. Repeat step 5 so long, same number of days as maximum as possible can be crashed simultaneously from each of the critical paths. From each of the critical paths. Of course, here also ensuring that the lowest cost load activities are crashed first and then the next lowest. So this you have to ensure at this stage also. So ensuring this, that you are crashing the lowest activities first, at this stage also you keep on crashing so long same number of days as maximum as possible can be crashed simultaneously from each of the critical paths. So this is step 6. Now step 7. At step 7 we have done all these crashings when no further crashing of activity is possible. Simply when no further crashing of activity is possible as per the above steps. So we have discussed steps from 1 to 6. We have discussed from 1 to 6, steps 1 to 6, involving how crashing of activities are to be done. So following all these rules, if no further crashing of activities is possible as per the above steps from 2 to 6. 2 to 6 means because step 1 was for computing cost load and you started crash from step 2. So that's why from step 2 to 6. If no further crashing of activities is possible as per the above steps from 2 to 6, and therefore total project duration cannot be reduced anymore. And since crashing is not possible, no further crashing is possible, you have reached the optimum level. So total project duration also cannot be reduced anymore. So if this is the stage when no further crashing of activity is possible and when project duration also cannot be reduced anymore, you have reached the optimum project completion time. You have reached the optimum project completion time is reached. You have reached the optimum project completion time. And therefore, obviously, after this, in the last step also, when we repeated step 5, you had to draw a new network diagram after the relevant crashing. After the relevant crashing, you had to draw a new network diagram at step 6. When you repeated step 5, after relevant crashing, at that stage, you had to draw a new diagram. So we are talking about this diagram. Therefore, optimum project duration time will be the project completion time as per the latest network diagram. So optimum project completion time at this stage, therefore, optimum project completion time will be the project completion time as per the latest network diagram. The latest network diagram, that means drawn at step 6. So obviously latest network diagram means drawn at step number 6. This we are talking about, this step number 6, draw a new network diagram. So drawn at step number 6. At step 6. So as per the latest network diagram drawn at step 6. So that will be your optimum, that will give you optimum project duration time. That network diagram will give you optimum project duration time, because you cannot crash further any of the activities and you cannot crash the project duration any further. So this is step 7. Step 7. In step 7 you have already found the optimum project duration. Now you have to calculate the optimum project cost. What is that and how it is calculated? Optimum project cost. You have to calculate optimum project cost. So how it is calculated? The formula, simple formula is, it is the sum of direct cost and indirect cost and also incremental cost. This is the sum of three things: direct cost, incremental cost and indirect cost. Direct cost plus incremental cost plus indirect cost is optimum project cost. Direct cost, simply the total of costs of all the activities. Total of normal cost. It is total of normal cost, and remember, of all the activities. Of all the activities. Of all the activities. It is total of normal cost. Total of normal cost of all the activities. Of all the activities means critical, non-critical, all. You have now critical activities, non-critical activities also. There may be still one or two non-critical activities which are yet to be, which can again have a number of days possible for crashing, but you are not going for that because you have already reached the project optimum project duration. So once you reach optimum project duration, I told you at the beginning of this discussion, if you still have one or two activities possible for further crashing by few days to crash level, you don't take up that, because that will not reduce to the optimum project duration. That will simply increase your cost. So you don't take up further crashing of these activities, because that will increase your cost without reducing project duration. So we are talking about, even you take these activities too, so normal costs of all the activities. So total of normal costs of all the activities is direct cost and indirect cost. Indirect cost per day, which you can arrive at by your calculation or accounting system, accounting process. By applying your accounting techniques, you can find out indirect cost. Indirect costs, all overhead costs. I repeat, indirect costs or overhead costs, which are not direct, which are indirect for that particular projects, and which are actually allocated at some proportion, some basis. So these are all indirect costs. Indirect costs per day multiplied by optimum project completion time. You arrived at your optimum project completion time, optimum project duration, number of days, and you know indirect cost per day. That multiplication, indirect cost per day multiplied by optimum project duration, optimum project completion time, will give you indirect cost. Here we take direct cost and indirect cost. We have understood how direct cost and indirect cost is calculated. Now we will see how incremental cost, how it is calculated. For calculating incremental cost, you have to draw this chart table, where you have 4 columns. Activity column, number of days crashed. Number of days crashed means from normal days to crash days. Number of days crashed will be, actually, this is the difference between normal days and crash days. So it will be, number of days crashed will be normal days, normal days minus crash days. So normal days minus crash days. So number of days crest. If an activity has 6 normal days and you have crest, as normal minus crest, remember that will be as per the final network diagram. Normal days minus crest days as per the final network diagram. Normal days, crest days as per normal minus crest days as per the final network diagram. As per the final network diagram. As per the final network diagram, whatever normal days and crest days you have, the difference between normal days to crest days is the number of days crest for all the activities, actually, for all the activities. Sometimes maybe you have not crest any days. You had normal days 6 days, and as per the final network diagram, the activity has same number of days because you have not taken up any cresting of that activity. So in that case, number of days crest will be nil or 0. So these days crest will be for those activities actually which have been crest from normal to a crest level or to a level which is feasible or which is optimum or which is possible. Even if you have the crest days, maybe you don't go to that maximum you can crest as per the rules we have discussed. So whatever is the crest level you have reached, so normal days to crest, number of days crest as per the final network diagram, number of days crest. So this is normal to crest, normal minus crest as per the final network diagram. Now that multiplied, you have this cost slope. We have already calculated cost slope for all these activities and at the beginning at the step number 1. So put all these cost slopes here as per step number 1, and days crest DC CS cost slope DC into CS, DC plus DC multiplied CS is this column for, and total of this summation of DC to CS is the incremental cost. So this is incremental cost, how you calculate. So after calculating incremental cost, you have optimum project cost, direct cost, incremental cost, and indirect costs. Indirect cost per day at optimum project completion time. Remember, indirect cost will be here multiplied by optimum project completion time. Indirect cost per day multiplied by 100. One thing at this stage, students, you need to understand, if you are asked to calculate normal project cost, normal project duration and normal project, what is that? Here we are talking about optimum project cost and optimum project duration, or optimum project duration and optimum project cost. We have understood how optimum project duration is arrived at and how optimum project cost is calculated. We have understood. But if you are asked to calculate normal project duration and normal project cost, what is that? Normal project duration is actually the critical path, the very first critical path you can find out from your first network diagram. From your first network diagram, the very first critical path you can find out, and duration of that critical path is the normal project duration. I repeat, in the very first network diagram, whatever critical path you find, the very first critical path, and duration of that, the very first critical path will be the normal project duration. And what will be the normal project cost? In that case, normal project cost will be same as direct cost plus indirect cost, but no incremental cost, because no crashing has been carried out. For normal project cost of normal project duration, no crashing has been carried out. So therefore, normal project cost will be simply sum of direct cost and indirect cost. Direct cost saying total of all normal cost of all activities, that is the direct cost. But indirect cost, if you are asked to calculate normal project cost, here we are calculating the optimum project cost. If you are asked to calculate normal project cost, the indirect cost will be indirect cost per day multiplied by normal project completion time, not the optimum. Remember, if you are asked to calculate normal project cost, the indirect cost will be for normal project cost, indirect cost per day multiplied by normal, not optimum, normal project completion time. Direct cost will be same, total of normal cost of all activities, but indirect cost will be multiplied by normal project completion time, which is, what is normal project completion time? Normal project completion time is the duration of the first critical path from the first network diagram. That is the normal project duration and the normal project time. So students, we have understood how optimum project cost is calculated, and that also this is part of step number 7. After learning all these things and understanding these things, the next what we will do, next we will solve one illustration. This is your illustration. This is illustration for solving today. Here in this illustration, you have been given normal time crash, normal time and normal cost. So normal time and normal cost of one project having all these activities. Here you have activities. These are all activities, and you are given normal time and normal cost of all these activities and all this normal cost of all these activities. And also you have been given the crash time and cost, crash time and crash cost of all these activities. Crash time means the time beyond which you cannot reduce the time of normal time. So normal time is 6 days, you can crash, you can reduce this time maximum up to 4 days. That's why it is called crash time. And for doing that, you have to increase cost from 600 to 1000. I repeat, in reducing the normal time to a crash level, I mean up to 4 days, you have to increase normal cost to 1000. That means you have to incur further cost of rupees 400. You have to incur further cost of 400 to crash this activity by 2 days. That's the idea of normal days, normal time and cost, and crash time and cost. You have been given all these things for all these activities of a project, and also you have been given indirect cost per day, which is actually the job of accountants, and which they have calculated as reasonably correctly. So indirect cost per day is 100, and now you are required. What you are required to do? You are required to draw the network diagram first and identify the critical paths. Draw the network diagram and identify the critical paths. And second, you are required to determine the normal project duration and normal project cost. The first thing is you are required to draw network. Draw the network, identify the critical paths. Identify the critical path. This is the first thing you have to do. And second, you have to determine normal project duration. Normal project duration, and of course normal project cost. After that, you have to do the crashing of activities and crashing of the project. And finally, you have to reach the optimum project duration, optimum project completion. You have to find out, you have to determine the optimum project completion time, as well as you have to determine optimum project cost. This is what we have to do at this stage to solve this illustration. So we'll do this. Let us solve this illustration. Students, let us draw the network diagram first for these activities. These are the activities. Let us draw the network diagram first. So here, the first activity, these are actually node numbers. Node number 1 to node number 2, node number 1 to node number 3, node number 2 to node number 4. 2 to 4 is activity, 1 to 3 is activity, 1 to 3, 2 is another activity. So first activity is 1 to 2. So we find these two activities, 1, 2 and 1, 3, node 1 to node 2, node 1 to node 3. These two activities have no immediate predecessor. These two activities have no immediate predecessor, so we can draw these two activities first this way. So node number 1 to node number 2. So if this is 1, so 1 to 2 and 1 to 3. Now after these two activities you have activity 2 to 4. So activity 2 to 4 has one immediate predecessor. This is 1, 2. So let us put the node number also at this stage. So node number, this is node number 1 and this is node number 2 and this is node number 3. So 1, 2 and 1, 3. Then activity 2 to 4. Activity 2 to 4 has one predecessor, only one predecessor, which is activity 1, 2. And activity after that you have activity 2, 5. And 2, 5, activity 2, 5 also has only one predecessor, which is 1, 2. So this is the activity which is the predecessor, immediate predecessor of 2, 4 and 2, 5, right? So activity 2, 4 and 2, 5 has only one same predecessor and one predecessor, activity 1, 2, because the ending node is 2 for this activity, whereas starting node of this activity is 2 and of this activity also starting node is 2. So therefore these two activities have same or common immediate predecessor 1, 2. So from this activity, after this activity you have two activities emanating from this node is two activities 2, 4 and 2, 5. Let us draw 2, 4 and 2, 5. So 2, 4 and 2, 5. So if this is node number 4 and this is node number 5. Node number 5. So 2, 5 and 2, 4. So these are the two activities which have immediate predecessor 1, 2. After that 2, 5 you have 3, 4. 3, 4 has immediate predecessor 1, 3 because ending node of 1, 3 is 3 and starting node of 3, 4 is 3. So where this activity ends, this activity starts. So 3, 4 has immediate predecessor 1, 3 and 1, 3 has immediate successor 3, 4. So 1, 3 has immediate successor 3, 4. Obviously 3, 4 will be this activity. 3, 4. So activity 3, 4 has immediate predecessor 1, 3 as well as 1, 3 has immediate successor 3, 4. Now after doing 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 4 and 2, 5 and 3, 4. So we have already done 5 activities. Now 4, 6 and 5, 6 and 6, 7. You have 3 more activities to be drawn here. 4, 6, 5, 6 and 6, 7. 6, 7 is the last activity and 6, 7. Remember, just look at it. 6, 7 is the last activity which has two immediate predecessors. Why? Because 6, 7 activity starts after this activity and after this activity, because this activity has ending node 6 and this activity also ending node 6, whereas this last activity is starting at 6. The starting node of this activity is 6. So 6, 7, the last activity has immediate two predecessors 4, 6 and 5, 6. 4, 6 and 5, 6 immediate predecessor of 6, 7, the last activity. So therefore the node number 6 must be somewhere here. Node number 6 must be somewhere here, because if it is node number 6, because you have activity 4, 6 and 5, 6. 4, 6 and 5, 6. Activity 4, 6 and 5, 6, and the last activity is 6, 7. Last activity 6, 7. the node number 7, node number 7, and this activity has immediate predecessor as it is given here. As it is given here, this activity has immediate predecessor 6, 7. The last activity has immediate predecessor 4, 6 and 5, 6. 4, 6 and 5, 6 are the immediate predecessor of activity 6, 7. So that way we completed this network diagram, but something more to be done here is to put the duration, and this says you put the duration. So duration, normal time, and crash time. So you put the normal duration. Say for example, for this activity 1, 2, normal duration is 6 days. And crash duration 4 days. For activity 1, 2, normal duration 6 days, crash duration 4 days. We'll write this way. We'll write this way. 6 within bracket 4, indicating 6 normal days, 4 crash days. Okay. So this way, let us complete this diagram with all these normal and crash days. We have already seen these are the normal days and crash days. Normal days and all crash days. So putting all these normal days and crash days, let us complete this diagram. Activity 1, 2, 6, 4, 2, 5, 3, 1. 3 normal days, 1 crash day. Activity 1, 3. 4 normal days and 2 crash days. Activity 3, 4. 6 normal days and 4 crash days. Activity 2, 4. 5 normal days and 3 crash days. Activity 4, 6. 8 normal days and 4 crash days. 5, 6. Activity 5, 6. 4 normal days and 2 crash days. And finally activity 6, 7. 3 normal days, 2 crash days. So these are normal days and crash days. 6 days normal, 4 crash, 3, 1, 4, 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 6 normal, 4 crash days, 5 normal, 3 crash days, and 8 normal and 4 crash days. Now you have to find out the critical paths. After drawing this network with all normal days and crash days, you have to find out the critical paths. And we learned in our second class how to determine a critical path using forward pass and backward pass. For applying forward pass technique and backward pass technique, backward pass calculation, you have to have these two sections of the lower part of the circle, and this will be earliest start and this will be latest finish. ES, LF, earliest start and latest finish. So by forward pass you calculate earliest start, and by backward pass you calculate latest finish. So let us start the forward pass calculation for earliest start. Earliest start, you start with 0 here. 0, and always remember when you draw the critical path, find out the critical path, you take the normal duration, not the crash duration. So taking the normal duration at this stage, you find the critical paths. So 0 plus 6, 6, then 6 plus 3, 9, then 0 plus 4, 4, but here is a merge activity. So for merge activity you take the higher one. So 4 plus 6 is 10 and 6 plus 5 is 11. Which one you take? Higher one, 11. And this is also merge activity, but before that find out 9 you have got. So you just calculate which is the higher one of earlier start. 9 plus 4 is 13, 11 plus 8 is 19. So higher is 19. So earlier start you take 19. and 19 plus 3 is 22. And start the backward pass, and during backward pass the earliest start of last activity becomes the latest finish of the last activity. So start with 22, and 22, and now keep on subtracting the normal durations. Subtract 22 minus 3, so it is 19, and here it is 19 minus 4 is 15, and here 19 minus 8 is 11. 19 minus 8, 11. But for this node, it is a burst node. So for a burst node, you take the lower of the latest finish. You take the lower of latest finish for a burst node during backward pass. So 15 minus 3 is 12. 15 minus 3 is 12, whereas 11 minus 5 is 11 minus normal duration of this activity is 5. So 11 minus 5 is 6. So which is lower? 6 and 12. So you take 6 lower of latest finish. Lower of latest finish of this node during backward pass for a burst node. For a burst node, you take the lower of latest finish during backward pass. Okay. So now for this latest finish is 11 minus 6, 5, and this is again the burst node. So take the lower one. 5 minus 4, 1, 6 minus 6, 0. So you take 0. So we have completed calculating earliest start and latest finish of all these nodes by forward pass and backward pass. Now we identify the critical activities. We will identify the critical activities, and for this we will apply the rules. What is the rule for critical activity? One activity will be critical if at the head of that activity earliest start and latest finish equal, and also at the tail of the activity or the start of that activity the node will have equal earliest start and latest finish. That means the rule, the simple rule is, if I state it here for your understanding, for critical activity, earliest start for an activity, earliest start and latest finish must be equal. Earliest start and latest finish must be equal. These two must be equal for an activity. Earliest start and latest finish of this activity must be equal. So this must be equal. So we can write it equal. So this must be equal. So if earliest start and latest finish of this node is equal, and of this node also earliest start and latest finish is equal, so this is critical. And this is one condition. The other condition is this is critical activity. Other condition is the duration. If duration of this activity, duration of this activity must be equals to earliest start. Say this is node number 1 and this is node number 2. So if earliest start of node 2 minus earliest start of node 1 equals to D. Earliest start of node 2 minus earliest start of node 2 minus earliest start of node 1 equals to D. These are the two conditions. This is one condition and this is second condition. First condition, earliest start at node 1 will be equal to latest finish, and node number 2, that is the ending node of this critical path, the earliest start and latest finish must be equal. If these two conditions are fulfilled, then the activity will be critical. So applying these two conditions, let us find which are critical activities. For this activity, earliest start here and latest finish equal, and earliest start and latest finish equal, and this duration 6 is also 6 minus 0. So this is critical. This is critical activity. This is not critical because the head of the activity, this node, is not having equal earliest start and latest finish, not critical. But here, see, earliest start and latest finish of this node equal, and also at the tail of this activity, the node is also having equal earliest start and latest finish. So, and also earliest start of this node minus earliest start of this node, the tail of the activity. So 11 minus 6 is 5. So this is critical. And same way, this is also critical. 19 minus 19 and 19, and 11 and 11, 19 minus 11, 8. It's critical. 22, 22, 11, 19 and 19, 22 minus 19, 3. So this is also critical. So these are the critical activities, and this is critical path. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7 is the critical path. And other activities are non-critical activities. Other activities are non-critical activities. Now, let us find the critical path this way. So, critical path is here, critical path. Critical path 1, 2 by node 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. The critical path. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. See, this is the critical path. In the first actually the illustration, the first thing you have to do, you are required to do is calculate normal project duration. So normal project duration, just keep on adding the duration, normal duration of the critical activities in the critical paths. So normal project duration, now you calculate the normal project duration. Normal project duration. Normal project duration. What is this? Sum of durations of all the critical activities. Sum of duration of all the critical activities. What is that? Critical activities, normal duration. Sum of normal duration. You should write sum of normal duration of all the critical activities. This sum of normal duration or normal time of all the critical activities of the critical path. So this is sum of normal duration, sum of normal time of all the critical activities of the critical paths. So this normal duration 6 plus 5 plus 8 plus 3. 6, 5, 8, 3. 6 plus 5 plus 8 plus 3 equals to 22 days. So this is our normal duration. normal duration of the project. This is normal duration of the project, normal project duration. Now you calculate normal project cost. So I told you normal project cost is the sum of direct cost and indirect cost. It's simply sum of direct cost and indirect costs. Normal project cost. Now you calculate normal project cost. Normal project cost. It's a sum of direct costs and indirect costs. Direct cost plus indirect cost. Direct cost is the total of normal cost of all the activities. Total of normal cost of all the activities. So, since this is the illustration we are going to solve, this is the normal cost. This is normal cost and total of normal costs of all the activities, that is direct costs. So if you total it up, if you total this costs, if you total this cost, you find direct cost to be 4,700. Total of this is 4,700. 4,700 is the total. So therefore, direct cost, which is total of normal costs of all the activities, is 4,700. So let us put it here. Direct costs 4,700. Indirect costs, I told you, for normal project costs, indirect cost is indirect cost per day multiplied by normal project duration. What is indirect cost of normal project duration? Normal project duration. Indirect cost of normal project duration is indirect cost per day is given here. Indirect cost per day is given here. Indirect cost per day is 100. Indirect cost per day is 100. So indirect cost per day multiplied by normal project duration, which is 22 days. So it will be rupees 100 into 22. So total comes to rupees 6,900. 6,900. This is our normal project cost. Normal project cost 6,900. We have answered the first things. First, we had to hear the requirement was, first requirement was draw the network diagram. We have drawn it. Identify the critical path. We have identified the critical path. We have calculated normal project duration, and also we have calculated or computed normal project cost. Now, the major part of this illustration is to crash the activities and crash the project duration, and finally to arrive at the optimum project completion time and optimum project cost. So to start with, the first step, we remember the first step was to calculate the cost slope. First step was to calculate the cost slope of each activity. This is step 1 for solving this illustration. This is step 1 for solving this illustration. Computation of cost slope of the activities. And I repeat, what is cost slope? Cost slope is, it is in terms of rupees per day. It is crash cost minus normal cost whole divided by normal time minus crash time. And these are the activities. And for each activity, cost slopes comes these. How? Normal time, crash cost. This is crash cost is 1,000. Normal cost for this activity, crash cost is 1,000. Normal cost 600. Whereas normal time 6 days, crash time is 4 days. I told you as you reduce the time or duration, cost increases from normal to crash. You reduce time from normal to crash by increasing cost from normal to crash. So crash cost minus normal cost whole divided by normal time minus crash time is the cost slope. So for activity 1 to 2, crash cost slope is 200. For activity 1, 3, this is crash cost and it's normal cost. So crash cost minus normal cost whole divided by normal time minus crash time. You get cost slope, and this way you get cost slope of all these activities, which are these 200, 700, 500, 100, 550, 556. Now these red inked or red colored the activities are actually critical activities. So therefore these are the cost slope of critical activities of the first critical path. These are the cost slope. This is the cost slope of activity 1, 2, which is critical. This is cost slope of activity 2, 4, which is critical. This is cost slope 550 of activity 4, 6, which is critical. And this is also cost slope of activity 6, 7, which is critical. So these are the cost slope of critical activities of the critical path. Why we do that? Why we do this way? Because the next very step after computing the cost slope, the next very step is to crash that activity of the critical path which has lowest cost slope. So from these critical activities of the critical path, lowest cost slope is 200. So activity 1, 2 has lowest cost slope. So we have to crash this activity, remember, by 1 day. By 1 day, if you have to crash this activity. So let us do that. This was our first drawing. Where we found the critical path and normal project duration. So we decided, since these activities, out of these critical activities, cost slope of 1, 2, this activity has the lowest cost slope. This activity has the lowest cost slope. So we decided to crash this activity by 1 day to start with. This is the first crashing. Second step, first crashing. We'll crash this activity by 1 day. Remember, here you can find 6 normal days. This activity has 6 normal days and 4 crash days. That means you can crash this activity by 2 days. You can crash this activity by 2 days from 6 to 4 crash days. But as the rule says, at this stage, you will crash this activity only by 1 day. And after this, you will draw a new network diagram. So we'll do that. This is our second diagram. Put the nodes here. Node number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now, in the earlier diagram, we have decided, after drawing the earlier diagram, we will crash this activity by 1 day, which had 6 normal days and 4 crash days. We will crash this activity by 1 day. So after crashing this activity, now it becomes 5 normal. After crashing, now it becomes 5 normal of reduced. If you don't like to say normal, now this is reduced duration is 5, or crashed duration is 5, whereas maximum possible crash is for up to 4 days. So 5, 4, you write this way. So that means this activity can further be crashed by 1 day. this activity after crashing this at this stage by 1 day, this can be crashed by 1 more days. Possible crash is by 1 more days, and all other activities will maintain their earlier status quo, earlier normal and crash duration. So write it: 3 1 normal crash, 4 2 normal crash, 6 4 8 4 5 3 4 2 4 2 and 3 2 3 2. All other activities will have earlier normal and crash duration. Only here we have reduced by 1 day. See, it was 6 4, now it is 5 and 4. At this stage again you have to calculate, you have to find out the critical paths. Maybe more than one at this stage, maybe same one critical path again. So let us see. So for that again you have to do the forward pass and backward pass technique. By forward pass, let us start it 0 5 8 4. Here merge activity, 5 plus 5 10, 6 plus 4 also 10. So there is no confusion, there is no conflict. It's the same 10. So put it here 10. And here again is merge activity, 8 plus 4 12, 10 plus 8 18. So what do you take? You take 18, the higher one. 18 plus 3 21. So project duration has been reduced from 22, earlier it was 22, now it is 21 project duration. And actually you have to do the backward pass again. Backward pass, 21 minus 3 18, 18 minus 8 10, 18 minus 4 14, 14 minus 3 is 11, and 10 minus 5 is 5. So you take the lower one, shorter one during backward pass for latest finish. So shorter one is 5. So put it 5 here. Then 10 minus 6. 10 minus 6 is 4. And 4 minus 4 is 0. And also 5 minus 5 is 0. So this is 0. Now let us find which are the critical activities and how many critical paths now you have after this crashing. This is critical, 5 5 0 0, 5 minus 5 0. So this is critical. This is also now become critical, 4 4 0 0, 4 minus 0 is 4. So this is also now become critical. And this is also critical, 10 10 4 4, 10 minus 4 is 6, so critical. And this is already critical, 10 10 5 5, 10 minus 5 is 10, 10 minus 5 is 5, so this is also critical. And this is not critical, and this activity is also not critical, but this 18 18, 10 10, 18 minus 10 is 8, so this is critical. And of course this is also critical, 21 21, 18 18, critical. So now you have two critical paths. Let us write down the two critical paths. You have two critical paths. Two critical paths. Okay, so one critical path is 1 2 4 6 7, which is earlier 1 2 4 6 7, the same 1 2, 4, 6, 7. And the second critical path, now you have 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. So 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. Now you have these are the two critical paths, 1, 2, 4, 6, 7 and 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. These are the two critical paths now you have. So as per rule, the next step is to find out the common activities of these two critical paths and crash them as much as possible, as maximum as possible. So here, for these two critical paths, it's very easy to understand. These two activities are common because one critical path goes like this, where this, and another path is this. So these two activities, 4, 6, and 6, 7, are common for both the critical. See, here also you can find 6, 7. You have 6, 7, 6, 7. So these two are common activities, but other activities are not common. So only these two activities are common, 4, 6 and 6, 7. 4, 6 and 6, 7. 4, 6 and 6, 7 are common activities. Otherwise, 1, 2, 2, 4, 1, 3, 3, 4. These are not common. So only these are two activities are common for both these two activities, and we have to crash at this stage as a rule as much as possible, as maximum days possible. So this activity is clearly understandable. This activity can be crashed by 4 days, and this activity can be crashed by 1 day. Normal days are 8 and crash 4 days. So you can crash this activity by 4 days, and this activity can be crashed by 1 day. And the rule says these common activities should be crashed at this stage. The common activities of both the critical paths should be crashed at this stage as maximum as possible. So this activity can be crashed 4 days, and this activity can be crashed 1 day. So total we can crash these activities by 5 days. So we'll do that. Let us draw another diagram by crashing these activities. Okay, let us draw another 1 day. So first let us draw the network. Node numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And as we decided, these two activities are common for two critical paths, and we will crash these two activities as maximum as possible. So this activity normal duration was 8 days and crash 4. Now we will have 4 days reduced duration. 4 days reduced duration after crashing 4 days. So we will write it 4, 4. 4, 4. And this activity normal duration had 3 days and crash duration 2 days, and we will crash these to 2 days. So this activity will crash to 2 days. So now it will have 2 reduced days and of course 2 crash days. And this activity 1, 2 we already crashed by 1 day, and after crashing 1 day, now it has 5 normal days, 5 reduced days and 4 crash days. So 5, 4. So we have carried out 3 crashing. We crashed this activity by 1 day, this activity by 4 days, and this activity by 1 day. And other activities will have still they will have the normal duration and crash duration as earlier, as stated earlier at the beginning. So there is no crashing for those activities. So they will remain the status quo. So put it here, the same, there is no crashing here, 3-1, no crashing here, 4-2, no crashing here also, so 5-3, and here also 4-2, no crashing, 4 days and 2 days, and here again 6-4, normal days and crash days. And after this, we have to again find out the critical paths and do the forward and backward pass. Forward pass 0, 5, 5, 8, 8, and this side 0, 4, 10. 10, why 10? Because it's a merge activity, 4 plus 6, 10, and 5 plus 5 also 10. But for this merge event, 10 plus 4, 14, whereas 8 plus 4 is 12. So you take 14, the higher one. 14 plus 2, 16. Now the duration is 16 and backward pass start with 16. 16 minus 2, 14. 14 minus 4, 10. 14 minus 4, 10. And this is burst event. So 10 minus 3 is 7 and 10 minus 5 is 5. So you take 5. The lower one, you take 5. 10 minus 5 is 5. 10 minus 3 is 7. So you take 5, lower one during backward pass. And this 10 minus 6 is 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. 5 minus 4 is 0. So this is how we complete forward pass, backward pass, and the critical paths remain same. How? 5, 5, 0, 0, 5 minus 0, 5. So this is critical activity. This is not critical activity, and this is also not critical activity. This is critical activity. 4, 4, 0, 0, 4 minus 0 is 4. So this is critical activity. This is also critical activity. 10, 10, 4, 4. 10 minus 4 is 6. This is critical activity. And this 14, 14, 10, 10. 14 minus 10 is 4. So this is also critical activity. And this is also critical activity. But this is also critical activity. 10, 10, 5, 5. 10 minus 5 is 5. So this is also critical activity, applying the rules. Applying the rules for identifying critical activities, we have found the same critical paths, 2 critical paths, and duration in the process, project duration has been reduced to now 16 days project duration. But remember, at this stage, the common activities are completely crashed. These 2 common activities are completely crashed, but you are left with the uncommon activities, which you just to see can be crashed or not, which can be crashed or not. You have to see now how many days can be crashed from common activities. Uncommon activities, from uncommon activities, how many days you can crash. Now you see that because common activities are already crashed. So which are the uncommon activities? So these 2 and these 2 are uncommon, because these 2 are of first critical path and these 2 are next another critical path. So these 2 are uncommon activities. Let us find out. See, to crash this path further, these 2 are completely crashed. Here you can crash 1 more day, and here you can crash 2 more days. That means this path 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. Let us note down. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. Here you can crash how many days? 1 and 2, 3 days. 2 plus 1, 3 days. And here for this critical path, how many days? These are completely crashed, so only these 2 are left. This activity can be crashed by 2 days, 4 minus 2, and this activity can be crashed also by 2 days, 6 minus 4. So total 4 days. So you can crash this path by 4 days. You can crash this path by 3 days. Rule says when you crash uncommon activities, you have to crash the same number of days. You have to crash same number of days simultaneously from each of the critical paths. So when you crash uncommon activities of the critical paths, you have to crash same number of days simultaneously from each of the critical paths. That means here you can crash for this from this critical path 3 days, here you can 4 days. So if you want to crash same number of days as maximum as possible from both the critical paths, you may crash only 3 days, because you cannot crash 4 days from this path. Although you can crash 4 days from this path, you cannot crash 4 days from this path. So same number of days, if it is 4, cannot be crashed from both these two paths. Whereas if you crash 3 days, if you want to crash 3 days, you can crash these 3 days, the same number of 3 days from both these critical paths simultaneously. Clear? Understood? So you cannot crash 4 days from both these two paths, whereas you can crash 3 days simultaneously from both these two paths, which is the rule. As maximum manpower possible. The maximum 3 days you can crash from both these two paths simultaneously. Now the critical point is you have to keep in mind when you crash at this stage, you have to keep in mind the cost slope. You have to crash the lowest cost slope first. So far as these critical paths is concerned, there is the confusion, because you have to crash 1 day here and 2 days here. So all you have to crash. But here, since the same number of 3 days you have to crash from this path, you have to choose which 3 days, because you can crash 2 days here, you can crash 2 days here, 2 plus 2, 4, but you can crash only 3 days. So which 3 days? These 2 and 1, or these 2 and 1? These 2 plus 1 or these 2 plus 1, you have to choose. So that's for this choice to make, you have to go by lowest cost slope. That means you have to identify out of these two activities 1, 3 and 3, 4, which activity has lower cost slope. Let us find out the cost slope of these two paths. As per the given problem, this activity has cost slope. This activity has cost slope 550, and this activity has cost slope 700. So as per the given problem, we can find this activity 3, 4 has cost slope 550, and this activity 1, 3 has cost slope 700. As per rule, you have to crash the lowest cost slope first. That means when you crash 3 days from this path, first you will crash this activity by 1 day, because this has lowest cost slope 1. Now the next activity also you will crash here only, because this activity has lowest cost slope. So 1, 1, 2 you have completed, and this has reached the crest level. The next activity, the third one, you will crash from here, because it has 700. After finishing all the available days to be crashed, because this has lowest cost slope, the last one, the third one, will crash from this activity. This will get second preference. This activity will create the last or second preference for crashing the activity, because this has higher cost slope than this activity. So simply, now this activity will be crashed by 2 days. Since it has lowest cost slope, so this activity will be crashed by all the 2 days here. So crash by 2 days. Actually, as per rule, first crash the lowest cost activity. So you crash lowest cost activity 1 day, and the second crash again 1 day. Of course, this activity, because having lowest cost slope. So after crashing all these 2 days from this activity, the last day will be crashed from this activity. So here you crash by 1 day. This activity you crash by 1 day. This activity you crash by 1 day. crash by 1 day. So that's the final decision we have made. So this activity will be crashed by 2 days, this activity will be crashed by 1 day, 3 days. 3 days will be crashed from this critical path, and obviously 3 days will be crashed from this critical path. So rule, as per rule, maximum possible 3 days will be crashed simultaneously from these two critical paths, and which activities are uncommon to these critical paths. Okay, understood? After this, we'll draw the next network diagram. Node number 1, node number 2, node number 3, node number 4, node number 5, node number 6, node number 7, and at this stage we crashed these two activities and these two activities. So this activity we crashed by 1 day. So earlier it was 5-4, now it will have 4-4. After 5-4, now it is 5-4. And this activity will crash by 2 days. Earlier it was 5-3, now it will have 3-3. 5-3, now it is 3-3, 2 days crashed. 5-4, now it is 4-4, 1 day crashed. And we decided to crash this activity by 2 days. Earlier it was 6-4, now it will be 4-4. After crashing 2 days from here, as we decided, now it is 4-4. And we decided to crash this activity by 1 day. Earlier it was 4-2, now it will be 3-2. 3-2. After 4-2, now it is 3-2. So we have crashed 1 day here. 1 day here and 2 days. So 3 days. And other activities will have same as earlier. The last diagram, C1, 4-2, 4-4, and 2-2. Okay, now do the forward pass, backward pass, and you will have the same critical paths. So in fact, at this stage you will have more critical paths. The same two and additional, you will have additional critical path, one additional critical path. So let us see how it is coming. Do the forward pass 0, 4, 7, 3, and 3 plus 4, 7, 4 plus 3 also 7, then 4 plus 3, 7, 7 plus 4, 11, 7 plus 4, 11, and also 7 plus 4, 11, 11 plus 2, 13, forward plus complete. Now backward plus 13 minus 2, 11, 11 minus 4, 7, and it's burst activity, burst event. So here also this burst event, 7 minus 3, 4, and also no, this is not burst event, this is burst event. So this is, here you can do 11 minus 4, 7, 11 minus 4, 7, and this is burst event. So 7 minus 3 is 4, and this side also 7 minus 3 is 4, 7 minus 3 is 4, 7 minus 3 is 4, 4, and 7 minus 4, 3, 3 minus 3 is 0, 4 minus 4 is 0. See now which are critical as per the rules. As per the rules, 4, 4, 0, 0, 4 minus 0, 0. So 4 minus 0 is 4 minus 0 is 4. So this is critical. 7, 7, 4, 4. 7 minus 4, 3, critical. 11, 11, 7, 7. 11 minus 7, 4, critical. 3, 3, 0, 0. 3 minus 0, 3. So this is critical. 7, 7, 3, 3. 7 minus 3, 4. This is critical. 11, 11, 7, 7. 11 minus 7 is 4. This is critical. 13, 13, 11, 11. 11, 13 minus 11, 2. This is critical. And this one, 7, 7, 4, 4. 7 minus 4, 3 is critical. So we find all the activities are critical, and now you have 3 critical paths. All the activities are critical, and the project duration is 13. It is a normal project, which is the optimum project duration. Now this 13 is optimum project duration because you cannot crash the activities further. So let us see whether you can crash further. So, but now you have 3 critical paths. So 3 critical paths. Which are the 3 critical paths? One, 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. 2, 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. And 3, 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7 is the last addition. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, and 1, 2, 4, 6, 7, the first one, and the next one was 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. So these are the 3 critical paths. Now, what is your observations at this stage? Observations. 3 critical paths. Observations are: observations are number 1. Observations are number 1. Critical path 3. Critical path 3 can be crashed by 4 more days. 3. We are talking about critical path 3. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. So let us see 1, 2, 5, 6, 7 critical path 3. 1, 2, 5, 6, 7 can be crashed by 4 more days. How? Here you cannot crash any further days. But here you can crash 2 more days, 3 minus 1. And here also you can crash 2 more days by 4 minus 2. Can be crashed. And yes, here you cannot crash. So these critical paths, from these critical paths you can crash 4 more days. 1 here, 2 here, 2 here, 3 minus 1, and 2 here, 4 minus 2. So 4 more days. So you can write observation critical path 3. Critical path 3. So you simply write CP3. CP3 can be crashed. Can be crashed by 4 more days. By 4 more days. This is the first observation. Critical paths 3 can be crashed by 4 more days. Number 2. Observation number 2. Critical path 1. Critical path 1, which is 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. Is there any scope for the crashing? 1, 2, no crashing possible. 2, 4, no further crashing possible. 4, 6, no further crashing possible. And 4, 6, 7 also no further crashing possible. So 1, 2, 4, 6, 7 from this path, observation is cannot be crashed anymore. So you can simply write critical path 1 cannot be crashed anymore. Cannot be crashed anymore for any more days. So this is the second observation. And finally, critical paths 2, 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. Critical path 2, 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. So this is 1, 2, no, critical path 2 is 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. Okay. Here you can crash one more day. Here completely crashed, and this also completely. So 1, 3, 4, 6, 7. This activity can be crashed one more days, and this no further crashing possible, no further crashing is possible. So this critical path 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, these critical paths can be crashed by one more day. So critical path 2 can be crashed by one more day. Now, the rule says you will continue crashing the uncommon activities so long you can crash simultaneously same number of days, maximum possible same number of days simultaneously from each of the critical paths. I repeat, the rule says at this stage when you have only uncommon activities to be crashed, you can crash same number of days from each of the critical paths as maximum as possible. So from this observation where you have 3 critical paths, you cannot crash same number of days from each of the activities, because critical path 3 can be crashed 4 days, but this critical path 1 cannot be crashed at all, and this critical path 2 can be crashed in 1 day. That means you cannot crash all the critical paths by 4 more days. So 4 days crashing is not possible. 1 day crashing is also not possible, because you can crash this activity by 1 day. This activity, this critical path 3 also can be crashed by 1 day. These also can be crashed. This critical path can be crashed 1, but this path cannot be crashed anymore. Simply, at this stage, as per rule, you cannot crash any of the activities further. So none of the activities from any of the critical paths can be crashed anymore. So therefore, the last observation, therefore as per rule, therefore as per rule, none of the activities therefore as per rule, no further crashing is possible. No further crashing of activity is possible. As per rule, no further crashing of activity is possible. So this is where we have come to the conclusion that this is our final network diagram. And as per diagram, the optimum project duration is 13 days, and we have to now calculate the optimum project cost. So we have arrived at optimum project duration. Which is 13 days. And now we have to calculate the optimum project cost. Calculate incremental cost. Calculate incremental cost first. So incremental cost. Incremental cost is calculated, as you have seen, by preparing a chart where days crest and cost slope are multiplied, and total of days crest multiplied is the incremental cost. We have done it. We have calculated this here, and number of days crest. Days crest, we have explained how it is arrived at. This is the normal days and the crest days. Normal days minus crest days is days crest. As per these crest days are as per final network diagram, the last network diagram where project duration was 13 days. So normal optimum project duration was 13 days. So this is the optimum or crest duration. So normal minus crest, normal duration minus crest duration is days crest, and cost slope we have already calculated for all the activities. For all that, and see these two activities, 2, 5, this activity and this activity. These activities have not crest at all. Only these are the two activities, 2, 5 and 5, 6. These are two activities where they have not crest at all. That means these activities, original normal days, and are same as before, the earliest as you started, and this activity also not crest at all. So days crest for these two activities is deal, and this way we've got all the days crest activity wise, and you have got cost slope calculated earlier at the beginning of this solution of problem, and multiplied by days crest and cost slope, you get these things. So this DC into cost slope for each of the activities, and total of this DC days crest by multiplied by cost slope DC into CS, total of DC into CS, summation of DC into CS, total this comes to 5,750. This is how we calculate incremental cost. This is incremental cost. 5,750 is our incremental cost. So we have got direct cost, indirect cost. Direct cost is 5,000. Direct cost is 4,700. Direct cost is total of all the normal costs of all activities. Total of normal cost of all the activities. Direct cost is 4,700. Indirect cost is indirect cost per day at the rate of 100 rupees per day. Indirect cost for optimum project duration. Optimum project duration is 13 days. So indirect cost comes to 100 into 13. 1,300 is the indirect cost. Direct cost. So this is this. Now, so conclusion, after all this crashing for the final diagram, network diagram, we've got optimum project duration, optimum project completion time 13 days. That was the requirement for this illustration to find out optimum project duration 13 days. Optimum project cost. Optimum project cost, direct cost plus incremental cost and indirect cost adding incremental cost. So direct cost, total of normal cost of all the activities, which is 4,700. Indirect cost at the rate of 100 per day for optimum project duration. Optimum project duration 13 days. So 100 in 13. 1,300 is indirect cost, and finally incremental cost we have just calculated 5,750, and total project cost, optimum project cost comes to 11,750. That's all for this class today, students. In the next class we'll take up program evaluation and review technique, where we'll find out estimated activity durations, and also we'll estimate the project duration using probabilities, a different set of probabilities. Under program evaluation and review technique, we'll estimate the activity durations of the project, and also we'll estimate the project total project duration, and also we'll try to find out the probability of completion of project within a certain number of days. So all these things we'll take up under program evaluation and review technique in the next class. That's all for today. Thank you all students. Thank you very much for joining this class, sharing this class, listening my lectures so patiently. So I hope you enjoyed this class, and if you liked this class and liked this video, please press the like button and also please subscribe my channel, and don't forget to give your valuable comments about this class and this video and about your understanding. Please give your comments. Thank you all, thank you very much.